Hey everybody, my name is Richard. I'm an alcoholic. The month of March 7th, I celebrated 30 years of recovery.
Whoop.
Woohoo!
All right.
I'm really happy to be here. Glad to meet all of you. I'm often tuning into this call while I'm driving home from somewhere, so you don't usually see my face, but I got myself home in time to make sure I made it live in person for the meeting. I think online meetings are really great now. 30 years ago, we didn't really have online meetings, but a meeting's a meeting wherever you gather two or more alcoholics together to share experience, strength, and help. So I'm really happy to be here. In about 20 minutes, going to try to share my experience, strength, and hope, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Because I have 30 years sober, I have a lot more to say about my recovery than I do my years of drinking and drugging. But I'll briefly qualify myself. Growing up, I never really felt like I was a part of something. I also never really got a sense of who I was. And for the longest time, I just felt like I was just going through my life in a way that I just didn't know how to navigate. I couldn't maintain a good relationship with my family. I couldn't keep a friend for a good period of time. And it was along the way, I found that not being myself was better than being myself. I think there were a lot of things I didn't like about myself for a very long time. And pretending to be someone else was easier because I just didn't like being in my own skin. For example, one of the things I really didn't like was, I didn't like the way I looked to other people. I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia in a predominantly white school, and I was one of the few Asian kids. And if you know the Asian American stereotype, we're all supposed to be super good at math, super good at science, and that kind of stuff. Not me at all. I was actually in remedial reading, and I was actually having difficult. And I need tutoring just to get by in basic math. And so I didn't sort of fit everyone else's ideal of an Asian American kid. And for my Chinese parents, who were extraordinarily intelligent and had advanced degrees, I barely made it past second grade. I remember when we switched schools and I was going to the fourth grade, they were going to start me back at a third grade because they didn't feel I was smart enough to go into the fourth grade at the same time the other kids were. I think that kind of stuck with me for a while, and I kind of learned to start faking it. And it wasn't really being true to myself. I was actually just figuring out ways to get by. And high school came along. And I thought high school was one of those times where, because different schools kind of came together, different kids who didn't know me from before, I can kind of reinvent myself. And I think I had this idea that, I don't have to be the awkward kid I was. I could be maybe one of the cool kids. And the way I found I could be a cool kid was, I started to experiment with alcohol. First time I tried alcohol was my parents' basement. Some beer was kept in my basement. And it was beer. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But then I got to my first party and tried alcohol with other people. And I think that's really made a big difference, because drinking alcohol on your own, you don't experience alcohol in the same way that I experience alcohol when I'm with other people. Drinking with other people, I became someone that people liked. I was funny. I was confident. I was able to talk to people. People liked me. And I was fun to get along with. And all of a sudden, I kind of became cool. I'm like, this is working. This is working. And I started to drink more and more at these parties I was invited to. And again, I get invited to all these gatherings. We'd be finding ways to get alcohol. I'd be drinking. And I figured it out. Alcohol was my magic solution to being the person I wanted to be without being myself. It was easier to sort of create my past life. People wanted to know about me, and they created these sort of lies about myself, things that I wasn't even interested in. I would pretend to be an expert on, or things that people who had shared an experience with something else, I'd say, yeah, I had that before. And, everything from, I would lie about not being a virgin, I had sex before, just anything that get people to like me. Alcohol was really a way to be outside of myself, and really to be something I really wasn't. And the best part was my parents didn't care. I think they had a clue, but you know what happened? My grades actually improved drinking than I was not drinking. So I really believe alcohol was going to be the thing that saved my butt. Over periods of time, I graduated to using drugs, and I found amphetamines. And I found that, I couldn't be drunk all the time, but I did find that amphetamines was a way to pick me back up so I could actually function through the day. So I had this routine where I would drink at night, but use amphetamines during the day to kind of keep me going, like a strange combination. And I didn't realize it, but, I knew my school had a big drug problem. And the drugs were really around cocaine and marijuana and other pills around that time. But I never thought of myself as an addict, and I never thought of myself as an alcoholic. I remember in one of my classes, they did this thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. It was actually in a textbook. And they showed a picture of a homeless man, and then an African-American homeless man, and they showed a picture of a sort of white woman, upper class, glamour 80s gown, dynasty kind of look. And that said, alcoholics could be anybody, but because they showed these sort of two very different perspectives, I said, well, that's great. Alcoholics come in all shapes and sizes, but not me at all. Over periods of time, I became less desirable to be around. People stopped inviting me to parties because I became a problem to other people. I would be involved in police breakups when the police would come to break up parties. And I became someone that really was somebody that was not pleasant to be around. And then drinking with other people became drinking by myself because people did not want to drink and use with me. But in my mind, these times I was drinking by myself, I was having a good time in my head. Alcohol did that to me. My love affair with alcohol was really strong that I really could not think I could live without alcohol. Senior year of high school came around, and this is the time where everyone's sort of setting their plans for the future. We've been down, this is our last hurrah, and everyone seems to be like bonded and going to places except for me. It just felt like I had nothing else for me to look forward to because everything that I had was among my friends in the high school I was in. And even what I had left, because I burned bridges with friends, I lost the trust of a lot of people, I greatly disappointed my parents, I disappointed my brother, and I've done all sorts of things to have people resent me and not want to be around me, that somehow I was alone. How did I go from being one of the most popular kids in my school to being almost by myself? Drugs were a big issue in my high school, and they actually did this sort of mass intervention. And I knew it was coming. And I knew, because I also participated in drug distribution, that they were going to come looking for people. And so I thought, okay, in respect to the actual drug addicts, that I will not use amphetamines because number one, I didn't want to be caught with them. Number two, I didn't want to be associated in any narcouts with people. And I really thought in my mind that I needed to pay tribute to those who are trying to get help and not use amphetamines. But the way I dealt with that was I just drank. And that's how I compensated because I could not go without amphetamines, but I could drink. I could definitely drink and get by.
Yeah, how can I help? Hello?
So this mass intervention came, and I saw people start getting help. And I think at that moment I realized that by cutting back on using my amphetamines, I started experiencing things I never experienced before. Number one, I never thought that I could actually go without amphetamines, and I started to experience detoxification. I also thought that the world looked very different. Do you ever sit in the front row of a movie theater, in an IMAX movie, and you see this big picture in front of you? That's how my life felt. It was overwhelming. Something I never had before was an anxiety attack or panic attacks. And suddenly I started having these anxiety and panic attacks that I'd never had before. And what I did was I drank because that's the only thing I knew how to do. That's the only thing I knew how to keep me calm. I just kept on drinking more and more and more. I really believe that the time I needed to get help was at my bottom when I realized that I cannot go on like this anymore, and I got caught. But I was caught in a way that was done in a loving kind of way. That my teacher actually stopped me, called my parents and said, "Your son needs help." And they brought him in, and I'm like horrified that they're brought into school because I'm being confronted about my drug use. And the thing I could say was, I wasn't using amphetamines. I could prove I was not using amphetamines. So I was able to get out of that one. But what I could not escape was the actual reality is that I needed to drink badly. Because the eyes were back on me, I could no longer hide drinking by myself. The privilege of doing things on my own was lost right away because my parents' eyes were all over me and I could no longer hide my drinking. The booze was gone for me. I did not realize how badly I depended upon drinking for everyday life. My parents, growing up as in Chinese culture and coming to America as immigrants, the way that our family has dealt with alcoholism and mental health is that we keep things in the family. In my family, there's a lot of mental health and a lot of alcoholism. My uncle is probably the best known alcoholic who I was actually named after. And they dealt with it by detoxing me at home. They thought they were detoxing me off amphetamines, but I was actually detoxing from alcohol. They did not know exactly what to do with me, but for 4 days, I had these hallucinations, I had these shakes, and I had a lot of nausea, but I got through it. Around that time, it was so bad doing this on my own that at some point in the night, I just dropped to my knees and I just sort of said to this belief, and I didn't believe in God at that time. I just said, I'll do anything not to be like this anymore. Before this time, the only God I believed in was myself because I thought I could manipulate people, therefore I had power. There was no God. There was no power greater than myself. I was the ultimate power. The only other time I ever hit my knees was a time a couple of years prior where I almost killed my own brother in an automobile accident. That was the only other time I asked for help from a power greater than myself. Shortly after that, I was 12-stepped into another program called Narcotics Anonymous, and I went to a meeting there. And I went there believing I was a drug addict, not an alcoholic. In my area, there weren't enough NA meetings for every day of the week, but there were AA meetings. And I was okay with the idea of not drinking alcohol because I kind of subscribed to the idea that alcohol was a drug. And in Narcotics Anonymous, they regard alcohol as a drug. So I was okay with that and okay with going to AA meetings because they also went to AA meetings. So through Narcotics Anonymous, I found Alcoholics Anonymous. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I began, even though most everyone there, and again, I came into AA when I was 17 years old. Most everyone there was probably my parents' age. But despite their experiences, the differences in age, through what they were saying, I could feel their emotion and I could identify what the feelings they've had. I may not have gone through divorces. I didn't go through the loss of cars or loss of jobs, but I experienced a lot of the same things they experienced in the 10, 20 years they took for them to get to their bottom, for me to experience my bottom in 3 years of drinking. I got the idea quickly, learned early on that I don't have to live this way anymore. But if I wanted to really live and be beyond and grow beyond whatever I was at that point, I had to change. One of the first things I heard was you have to change everything about your life. And I was at a point where I was no longer willing to try using again, but I was willing to try this other new way of life. Through going to more AA meetings, I began to realize what an alcoholic I really was. Those questions you get, with the, is alcohol this problem? Do you drink this way? And over time, as I got more honest with myself, I checked off almost all those questions. And I modified it in a way that worked for me. Everything that had to do with jobs, I put school in there. Everything. And so so people were helpful in modifying those questions for me that applied to my reality. I knew I drank so harshly that I was still in disbelief that I did. Because I was having so many panic attacks, I was referred to medical care. Actually, I was referred to psychiatric care. And one of the questions they wanted to ask me was, they did a laboratory test, and my liver was extremely inflamed. And because I was not truthful about my drinking, they told me that I had hepatitis B, because it was the only way to explain why my liver was so inflamed, but I wasn't drinking lots of alcohol. I wasn't honest with my healthcare professional. And I was told at that point my liver was so inflamed that I had a 40% chance of delivering liver cancer or dying of liver cirrhosis, the same way my uncle would probably die. My uncle was probably my family's best known alcoholic, and he eventually died a year after I got sober from liver disease. His liver literally just gave out. 17 years old, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had not blown up every opportunity in my life. I still somehow found, I was previously admitted to a university in Philadelphia. And at that time, my support network and I decided that it was about the best time for me to move out of the house, move to Philadelphia, and try to make some sense of my life. I got into a school that was probably more prestigious than I was really into. Long story short, I was an entrepreneur and I had a front business to cover for a other alternative business. And because of the front business was so successful, that was how I got into this great university. Anyway, the good news was I was able to, geographic was actually good for me at this point, and I moved to Philadelphia. I know we're coming close to 10 o'clock and I want to try to sum up the past 30 years in about the next few minutes. I'm so fortunate to have been sober this long. And now it's been 30 years later. I love my life the way it has been. Every day has counted for something. Things that happened in parts of my life, I used to expect there would be an instant result. And I now realize things that I did early on, the results were often felt many years later. Other things I learned, that the sense of terminal uniqueness would go away. And that in the very beginning I said, I didn't know who I was. Until this day, I still don't. And that's because it matters less. It matters less to me about knowing who I am. And it now matters more to me who I am to other people. Because now I'm a friend, I'm a coworker, I'm a teacher, I'm a sponsor, I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm an uncle, I'm many things to other people. And it's not about me anymore. It's about the value I offer to other people now. That's what's changed about my life. The biggest change in my life is the entire orientation about who I am and who I was meant to be. It's less important to me about how much I'm valued. It's more important to me about how valuable I am to other people. I'm now 47 years old. 30 years later, I'm sober. I'm having the time of my life. I'm married. I have great employment, and I have financial security where I'm ensuring my life. I'm ensuring a very long life for myself. At 17 years old, I never thought I'd make it past the age of 18. And now I'm planning on living a long life of financial security for myself and my husband, because I plan on being around for a long time. It's a very different mindset than I had 30 years ago, where I thought I could not possibly live past the age of 18. I was on a death path because I didn't feel I could I felt that I really needed, I needed to get out. And the only way I knew out was through suicide. I would have been dead if it not were for the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And to this fellowship, I am grateful. The last thing I'll say about my recovery is I could not do this without all of you. I could not do this without the technology that people are using today. Back then we had telephones, the ones the ones that had cords like these. And I'm really grateful these technologies today enable people to connect from all around the world. I see people from Mexico City here. I see people from Canada here. And it's really wonderful to connect with all of you. Thank you. Thank you, AA. Thank you, Fifth Dimension. Thanks, Chris. And thank you, all of you.